Okay, folks, now I've taken some snapshots of the video that I did on the quick computer fix. Thank God that at this time of year, the house is not really hot and the temperatures are not really hot. What I did was totally, completely wrong. Not in the sense of removing the dust, but everything else in that instance I have. Now, first and foremost, always remember to unplug the power source from your computer. Okay? Now, when I took the fan off, it was still attached to this aluminum coil thing, which is called a heat sink. And the heat sink, the fan cools the heat sink, which is attached to your CPU, or it's the brain of your computer. It's the chip. It's the chip on your motherboard. Okay? Now, in between that CPU chip and the heat sink, there is supposed to be something called thermal paste. Now, thermal paste, because that gets really hot, what the thermal paste does is it keeps your chip cool so that it doesn't fry. Now, if ever you take the heat sink off of your computer chip, you're never supposed to use a pastry brush on it, folks. Don't touch it at all. Don't blow it out with an air compressor, because an air compressor actually may be too strong. So unless you know how to gauge how much air pressure to use, I don't advise it. Buy the cans of compressed air that are specifically designed for cleaning computers. So, also, before putting my heatsink back on the computer chip, where the heatsink meets the computer chip, I was supposed to clean the old thermal paste off and put new thermal paste on. Okay? This is to protect your motherboard chip from overheating. So, I have since ordered a package that has the silicone thermal pads, the cleaner that will clean the old paste off of the heatsink and the CPU chip, and also some oil for my fans. Now, I have since learned that the silicone thermal pads are actually no longer used in desktops, but considering the fact that there's people out there using Vaseline and toothpaste, or whatever the case may be, for thermal compound, I think I'm going to be okay as long as I measure and cut my thermal pads to completely and properly fit my CPU chip. So when that time comes, I will again take my heat sink off, take my fan off. I will properly clean the old thermal paste off both components, and I will then clean it and put the silicone thermal pads on. If anybody out there wants to weigh in on whether or not I should use silicone pads to thermal paste, that's fine. You go right ahead. I have probably a 2-week wait before my pads actually get here. So, folks, Mrs. Volfie may have shown you a quick way to clean the dust, but probably the only thing I should have done was remove the fan from the heatsink. I should never ever have removed the heatsink from the CPU without replacing the thermal paste. This is the Mrs. Volfie from our half-acre homestead saying, sorry I screwed up, folks, but I am going to do my best to show you how to do it properly when I get the equipment. Take care. Bye-bye.